Welcome back to Basic Mathematics. In this video, we're going to be looking at adding and subtracting fractions, another operation where the distinction between like or unlike fractions is going to play a big role in how the problem works. So without further ado, let me get my head out of the way and let's dive in. The rule for adding fractions is fairly straightforward. If you have two fractions who have the same denominator, you can add them by simply adding their numerators. If you are subtracting two fractions that have the same denominator, you can simply subtract their numerators. If they don't have the same denominator, then you have to worry about trying to figure out a way to make them have the same denominator so that you can go from there. But as an example, if I have something like 9 over 13 plus 5 over 13, I notice that these both have a denominator of 13. So to calculate this, I'm going to take 9 plus 5 all over 13, and 9 plus 5 is 14. Depending on the application, I could change that to a mixed number from an improper fraction. And in a lot of problem-solving applications, that will be necessary. But when it comes to just looking at algebra, leaving it as the improper fraction 14 over 13 will be good enough. One thing you always have to pay attention to is wondering if a fraction can reduce. Consider 17 over 24 minus 5 over 24. These have the same denominator, so you can subtract them. And 17 minus 5 is 12. But 12 over 24 is a fraction that can reduce. In fact, the easiest way to do this is to notice that 24 is 2 times 12. So if I divide top and bottom by 12, I get that the result here is 1/2. When your fractions do not have the same denominator, the first thing you have to do is find a way to rewrite them using a common denominator. Consider, for example, 5/6 plus 7/12. This one is not too bad. I notice that if I take 6 and I multiply it times 2, I will get 12. And then I can simply add the fractions that now have like denominators. It could be a little bit more complicated. You might have a case where you have to multiply both fractions by something. Consider, for example, 5 over 16 plus 7 over 18. 16 and 18 are not really going to do that much in common. And so we have to figure out how to multiply 16 times something and 18 times something else in order to make things work out. One trick that I like to use to save myself a little bit of headache in trying to figure out what do I multiply times 16 and times 18 so that this works out. I noticed that 16 and 18 are both divisible by 2. 16 is 2 times 8, and 18 is 2 times 9. By noticing that, I can claim right away that if I multiply this first fraction top and bottom by 9, and this second fraction top and bottom by 8, notice the denominators. 2 times 8 times 9, 2 times 9 times 8. The commutative property of multiplication says we don't care what order we put that multiplication in as long as it's all there. Right? And in fact, that also makes my life easier here because I know that 8 times 9 is 72. And 72 times 2 is a lot easier to work through than 16 times 9 or 18 times 8. 17 times 2 is 144. So we get here, 5 times 9 is 45. We already calculated that denominator is 144. 7 times 8 is 56. And if I add 45 plus 66, I get 101. I should check to see if that's going to reduce, but there's actually not a lot that we can have to check. 144 is divisible by 2, it's divisible by 3. 101 is not divisible by either of those things. Neither one is divisible by 5 or by 7 or by really anything else at all. So with that, we are done. We've gotten through that one. Right, so not a lot to talk about there. The process is relatively straightforward. It does take some practice to get used to how to recognize, I keep pointing in the wrong direction, how to recognize over here what we are doing and how we find these common denominators. Like I said, if you can notice that you multiply one of the denominators by something to get the other one, that's easy mode. If you don't have that, you might look for a common factor between the two and rewrite both of those denominators using multiplication. Ignoring the common factor, you multiply by the other part of the fraction, and there you have it. If you don't have anything at all, well, you just multiply the first fraction by the denominator of the second fraction by the denominator of the first one. The numbers tend to be really horribly ugly, but it still works out. Right. With that, I would like you to take some time working through the practice problems. Make sure that you have a feel for this general idea of adding and subtracting fractions. And I'll see you in the next video.